He was 11 years old when they took him, ripped from his home, handed to the enemy, and locked inside the court of the most powerful empire in the world. And when he finally came back, he came back as something else entirely, something the Ottomans had never seen before, something that would stop the greatest conqueror of the age dead in his tracks, and leave him staring at a field of death so vast, so deliberate, so horrifying, that he turned his army around and went home. This is the story of Vlad Dracula, not the vampire, not the Hollywood monster, the real one. And the real one was far more terrifying than anything Bram Stoker ever imagined. By the end of this, you will understand how a prince with no real army, no powerful allies, and a kingdom the size of a small American state managed to humiliate the Sultan who had conquered Constantinople. You will understand why the Forest of the Impaled became one of the most psychologically devastating weapons in military history. And you will know the moment Mehmed the Conqueror, a man who had never retreated from anything, looked out at what Vlad had built and quietly admitted that a man capable of this could not be defeated. To understand Vlad, you have to understand where he came from. And you have to understand that his story begins not with power, but with captivity. In 1442, Vlad was around 11 years old. His father, Vlad II Dracul, was the ruler of Wallachia, a small principality in what is now southern Romania, wedged between the expanding Ottoman Empire to the south and the Kingdom of Hungary to the north. His father's name came from his membership in the Order of the Dragon, a Christian knightly brotherhood dedicated to fighting Ottoman expansion. Dracul meant dragon or devil, depending on who you asked. His son Vlad would inherit the name as Dracula, son of the dragon, son of the devil. To keep his father in line, the Ottomans demanded hostages. They took Vlad and his younger brother Radu and brought them to the Ottoman court. For years, the two brothers lived inside the empire that their father was supposed to be resisting. They learned Turkish. They studied Ottoman military tactics, Ottoman culture, Ottoman psychology. And somewhere in those years, Vlad witnessed or learned about impalement. The Ottoman method of execution, slow and public and designed to break the spirit of anyone who saw it. His brother Radu adapted to captivity differently. He became close to the Ottomans. He converted, befriended the Sultan's son, and eventually became known as Radu the Handsome, a favorite of the Ottoman court. He chose assimilation. Vlad chose something else entirely. He stored everything he learned inside him like a weapon, and he waited. When Vlad eventually seized the Wallachian throne in 1456, the Ottomans assumed he would be manageable. He knew their language. He knew their customs. His brother was their ally. Surely he would pay his tribute, bow his head, and rule his small kingdom quietly under Ottoman authority like so many vassal princes before him. They had completely misread him. The tribute the Ottomans demanded was not merely money. It was a jizya tax, a levy on non-Muslims that included goods, gold, and sometimes boys. Young men taken from Wallachian families to be trained as janissaries, the elite soldiers of the Ottoman military. Vlad refused, not quietly, not diplomatically. He refused in the loudest, most violent, most public way he could imagine. In 1460, Ottoman envoys arrived at Vlad's court to demand the tribute personally. They kept their turbans on in his presence, a sign of disrespect, a reminder that they did not bow to minor Christian princes. Vlad had their turbans nailed to their heads. He then had the envoys impaled. The message was not subtle. There would be no tribute, there would be no submission, and anyone who came to demand either would leave on a stake. In early 1462, Vlad went further. He launched devastating raids across the Danube River into Ottoman-controlled Bulgaria. His forces burned villages, slaughtered garrisons, and left a trail of destruction across the frontier. He wrote a letter to the Hungarian king Matthias Corvinus, boasting of the results. In that letter, he claimed to have killed over 23,000 Turks and Muslim Bulgarians. He described the raids with the calm precision of a man keeping careful accounts. He was not exaggerating for effect. He was reporting facts, and he wanted the world to know. This could not be ignored. This was not a border skirmish. This was an open declaration of war against the most powerful empire in the known world. Sultan Mehmed II, the man who had conquered Constantinople in 1453 and ended the Byzantine Empire, the man who was in the middle of building an empire that would last for centuries assembled his response personally. He gathered an army of between 60,000 and 150,000 men, including his elite Janissary corps. He would lead the invasion himself. He would depose Vlad, install Radu as a puppet ruler, and absorb Wallachia into the Ottoman machine. It would be quick. It would be total. It would be an example. Vlad had perhaps 20 to 30,000 soldiers. Against Mehmed's force, his army was a fraction of what was needed for a conventional defense. He knew it. He had no illusions about meeting the Ottomans in open battle. So he chose a different kind of war entirely. He burned his own country. As the Ottoman army advanced through Wallachia in the summer of 1462, they found nothing. Crops that should have been ripening in the summer heat were ash. Wells that should have given water had been poisoned. Villages that should have provided shelter were rubble. Vlad had evacuated the civilian population, destroyed every source of food and water, and turned his own kingdom into a wasteland. There would be nothing for the invaders to eat, nothing to drink, nowhere to rest. The land itself became a weapon. And then, on the night of June 17, 1462, Vlad struck. Under total darkness, with a moonless sky to cover their approach, Vlad led a cavalry force of between 7,000 and 10,000 men directly into the Ottoman camp. Some of his soldiers were disguised in captured Ottoman uniforms and equipment, allowing them to slip through the outer perimeter. The objective was not a battle. It was an assassination. Vlad intended to personally kill Mehmed II in his tent, to cut the head off the invasion in a single night. The camp erupted into chaos. In the darkness, with thousands of disguised Wallachian horsemen tearing through the tents, Ottoman soldiers could not tell friend from enemy. They turned on each other. The screaming, the fire, the confusion. It was exactly what Vlad had designed. He fought his way toward the Sultan's quarters. He hit the wrong tents. In the massive, sprawling Ottoman encampment, even Vlad's intelligence was imperfect. And in the chaos of the night raid, he struck the quarters of 2 grand viziers instead of the Sultan's pavilion. The Janissaries, the most disciplined soldiers in the world, rallied around Mehmed and held the perimeter. The fighting lasted from 3 hours after sunset until dawn. Casualties on the Ottoman side were enormous. But the Sultan was alive. Vlad withdrew into the darkness with his force intact. The assassination had failed. The battle itself, tactically, was inconclusive. But the psychological damage to the Ottoman army was severe. These men had come to conquer. They had not expected to spend the night fighting for their lives in their own camp, unable to see their enemy, cutting down their own companions in the dark. The Ottoman army pressed on toward the Wallachian capital of Târgoviște. What they found when they arrived stopped them cold. The city was deserted, gates wide open, no army, no resistance, just silence. Vlad had evacuated it completely, leaving nothing behind for the Ottomans to claim, nothing to signal victory, nothing to occupy. And on the roads leading into the city, stretching out before them as far as the eye could see in every direction, was the forest. Thousands of wooden stakes driven into the earth, and on every stake, a body. The bodies were Ottoman prisoners and soldiers captured during Vlad's raids earlier that year. They had been impaled, run through on sharpened stakes and left to die, slowly, in the open air. Some accounts say the display extended 60 miles along the roads leading to the capital. Byzantine historian Ioannikos Chalkokondyles, who recorded the event from contemporary sources, described it as a field of stakes stretching for miles, with thousands of corpses rotting in the summer heat, swarming with flies, the stench rolling across the landscape and hitting the invaders long before they could see what lay ahead. The highest stake in the center of the display held a specific body, Hamza Pasha, a senior Ottoman commander who had been previously captured by Vlad. He had been placed at the highest point, elevated above the rest, a message written in death about the fate of high-ranking enemies. Vlad himself had written to King Matthias that he had killed over 23,000 men during his earlier campaigns. Many of them were here. The Ottoman soldiers stood at the edge of this forest and could not move forward. The smell alone was enough to make men retch. The scale of it, the sheer, deliberate scale, was something no army in that era had ever encountered. This was not a battlefield. This was a statement. It was a message aimed directly at the minds of every soldier standing there, asking them a single question: is this land worth it? Mehmed reportedly reacted with a combination of horror and something close to reluctant admiration. The Byzantine historian Chalcondyles records him saying, in effect, that it was not possible to deprive of his country a man who had done such great deeds, who had such a diabolical understanding of how to govern his realm and its people. A man who had done such things, Mehmed concluded, was worth much. Worth much. From the man who had conquered Constantinople, from the man who had broken the Byzantine Empire. He stood at the edge of Vlad's forest and paid him the highest compliment a conqueror could give. And then he turned around. Combined with the shattered morale from the night raid, the spreading disease in the camp, the chronic supply shortages caused by Vlad's scorched earth tactics, and the absence of any clear military objective that could be achieved without catastrophic cost, Mehmed made the decision to abandon the full conquest of Wallachia. He withdrew his main army back toward Adrianople, burning the port of Bryaila on the way out as a final act of spite. He left behind a smaller force under Radu, Vlad's own brother, to continue pressuring Wallachia indirectly. And that, in the end, was how Vlad lost. Not to Mehmed, not on any battlefield. He was betrayed by his own nobility. The Wallachian boyars, the landed aristocrats who had always resented his iron rule, turned against him. Vlad was forced to flee, sought help from the Hungarian king Matthias Corvinus, and was imprisoned instead, held for over a decade, from 1462 to 1474 or 1475, while his brother Radu ruled Wallachia under Ottoman patronage. He came back one final time in 1476, briefly seizing the throne again with Moldavian and Hungarian support. He lasted months. He was killed in battle, most likely against Ottoman-backed forces, sometime at the end of that year. His head was sent to Constantinople as a trophy and displayed on a spike. The man who had built the Forest of Stakes, displayed on a stake himself, in the capital of the empire he had defied. His legacy split in two directions that have never fully reconciled. In Romania, Vlad is remembered as a national hero, the prince who took an impossible military situation and turned it into one of the most remarkable defensive campaigns in European history, who forced the greatest conqueror of his age to walk away without his prize. In the wider world, his methods became the foundation of his legend as a monster, amplified by German pamphlets printed after his fall that exaggerated his atrocities for political purposes, spreading across Europe as propaganda until, 4 centuries later, a writer named Bram Stoker encountered the name Dracula and found in it something dark enough to build a vampire upon. Both versions are true. He was both things at once, a defender and a monster, a patriot and a man capable of building a forest of the dead 60 miles long to send a message to an emperor. What makes the story of Vlad Dracula and the Forest of the Impaled so enduring is not the horror of it, though the horror is real. It is the question underneath the horror. How far is too far to protect what is yours? How much of your own humanity do you sacrifice when you fight an enemy so much larger and more powerful than yourself? Vlad looked at the Ottoman Empire, the most powerful military force in the world, and he understood that the only weapon he had that they did not was the willingness to do what they would not expect. To be more terrifying than the thing coming to destroy him, it worked, once, for one summer, against the greatest conqueror of the age, and then his own people took him down. If this blew your mind, smash that like button and subscribe, because there are 100 more moments in history that nobody ever told you about, and we are coming for every single one.